Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Pranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Praptasya Kalyana Gurnana Vasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Praptasya Kalyana Gurnana Vasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Charanara Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Mahaprabhu ki Tana Nitya Gita Varitramadhyam Manasura Sena Romanchakam Pasru Taranga Bhajo Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Taranga Bhajo Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Shri Vigrahara Dana Nityanana Shringaratanma Niramarjanado Dana Nityanana Shringaratanma Juktasya Bhaktamsa Niyunjatopi Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Chaturvidhashi Bhagavat Prasada Satvana Truptam Hari Bhakta Sangha Prasada Satvana Truptam Kridvaiva Truptim Bhajato Shadeva Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Shri Radhikama Davayara Para Madhura Leela Guna Rupa Namna Shri Radhika Davayara Para Pratikshana Swa Dhanalalupasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Ne kunja yono rati keli siddhai jayali bhere jokte apekshaneya ne kunja yono rati keli siddhai jayali bhere tatrati daksha otivalavasya Bande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam. Sakshadharidena samasta shashre ruktastatava vyataiva sadhavi. Sakshadharidena samasta shashre kintu prabhaja priya eva tasya Vande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam. Priya eva tasya Vande Gurashi Yasya prasada Bhagavat prasada Yasya prasadam Nagati kutapi Dasha Yasya prasadam Nagati kutapi Jayam stovam tasya Yasa trisandhyam Vande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam. Vande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam. Vande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam. Vande Gurashi Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunavadi Pachatari Shatarine Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunavadi Pachatari Shatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, oh, Hare Krishna, oh, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, oh, Hare Rama, oh, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare Yaraya Nama Krishna Jadavaya Nama Jadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Nama Gopal Govindaram Shri Madhusudam Giridhari Gopina Madana Mohan Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhattaraguna Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasaraguna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Shri Radha, Nila Madhava Radha, Nila Madhava Radhe. Jaya Jagannatha, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Subhadrama, Jaya Sudarshan Chakra. Jaya Sitaram, Sitaram. Jaya Sitaram, Sitaram, Sitaram. Jaya Lakshmana Hanuman. Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha Jaya, Lakshmi Narasingha, Lakshmi Narasingha Jaya, Prahlad Mara. Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaur Haribo. Nitai Gaura Pramanande Hari Bol. Jai Om Vishnu Paraparamsa Prabhajakacharya Astutara Sarashishya Mari Divine Grace Abhacharvina Bhakti Viranta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Pratishta Viviti Samstapakachara Vaishnava Siramani Parit Pavana Srila Prabhupada Ji Maharaj Ki Jai. Shri Gauriya Guru Varga Putiti Udhari Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunatha Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Guna Sat Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. नाम आचार्य शीला हरिदास ठाकुर जी की जय अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय जय परम दयाल श्री नित्यानंद प्रभु की जय जय प्रेम नाम संकीर्तनेक जनक प्रेम पुरुषोत्तम श्री सच्चिदानंद स्मरण गौरंग श्री चैतन्य महाप्रभु गौर हरि प्रमदान हरिनाम संकीर्तन जय की युग धर्म हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र की जय प्रियत्न ट्रांसडेंटल बुक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सेवा की जय श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ राधा कुंड श्याम कुंड गिरिराज गोवर्धन की जय श्री ब्रज वृंदावन मथुर धाम की जय तेलोश श्री राधा नील माधव की जय श्री मायापुर नवद्वीप एक चक्रधाम की जय जय श्री पुरुषोत्तम क्षेत्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय श्री जगन्नाथ स्वामी बलदेव प्रभु बलदेव सुदर्शन चक्र भगवान की जय जय भक्ति सर्व विघ्न विनाशना कर सिंहदेव भगवान की जय सीताराम लक्ष्मण भक्त हनुमान जी की जय जगंगा माई जमुना माई की जय तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी भक्ति देवी की जय श्री मथुरा रानी की जय समवेत भक्त वृंद की जय Nitai Gaurari Pramanande Hari. All glory to the assembly bodies. All glory to the assembly bodies. All glory to the assembly bodies. All glories, all glories, all glories to Shri Shri Guru Shri Gauranga. Namaste Nadasi Gaya. Namaste Narasingaya. Pralada da 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 Pralada da 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 Hiranyakasipu Bhaksha Hiranyakasipu Bhaksha Silatanka Nakalaye Jaya Silatanka Nakalaye Ito Nisingo Parata Nisingo Ito Nisingo Parata Nisingo Jata jata jamita tani singam Jaya jata jata jamita tani singam Bahir ni singam Hridaya ni singam Bayi mi singam, Radhe mi singam. Narasingam Adim Sharanam prapade tava kara kamala bare nakam adevata stinga dalita Hiranyakashipu Anavinga Kesavadita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisa Re Jai Jagadisa Re Jai Jagadisa Re Baba Nakam Adavutastena Dalita Hiranyakasipu Kanavinga Kesavadita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisa Re Jai Jagadisa Re Jagadisa Re Savadita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisa Re Jai Jagadisa Re Jai Jagadisa Re Savadita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisa Re Jai Jagadisa Re Jai Jagadisa Re Jaya Nishingade Jaya Nishingade Nishingade Jaya Nishingade Jaya Nishingade Jaya Prahlada Mara Jaya Prahlada Mara Prahlada Mara Jaya Prahlada Mara Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha Jaya Prahlada Mara Prahlada Mara Prahlada Mara Jaya Prahlada Mara Jai Shri Bhakti Pata Sarvigna Shanakari Shingade Bhagavan ki Jai Bhakta Shrista Prahlad Maharaj ki Jai Nitai Gaurari Premanande Hari Hari Mo Shri Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradi Devi Sattavataye Namo Namaha Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradi Devi Sattavataye Namo Namaha Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradi Devi Sattavataye Namo Namaha Srimati Tulasi Maharani Vrindadevi ki
नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्णा प्रेयसी नमो नमः
तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः
नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्णा प्रेयसी नमो नमः
तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः
राधा कृष्णा सेवा पावो ए अभिलाषी
राधा कृष्ण सेवा पाव अभिलाषी
राधा कृष्णा सेवा पावो ए अभिलाषी
राधा कृष्ण सेवा पाव अभिलाषी
नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्णा प्रेयसी नमो नमः
तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः
जितो मारा शरण लो तारा वंच पूरा न हो
तुम्हार शरण तार बंच पूर्णा
कृपा कोरी कोरो तारे वृंदावन वासी
तुम्हें कृपा करे करतरे वृंदावन वासी
मोराए अभिलाष विलास कुंज दियो वास
मोरा है विलास कुंज दियोवा
नयने हरिवो सदा जुगल रूपरासी
अमिनायन देव सदा जुगल रूपरासी
এই নিবেদনা ধারো সাখীর অনুগাতা করো
নিবেদনাধার সকিরায়নো গত কর
সেবা অধিকারা দিয়ে করো নিজ দাসী
সেবায়ারে কর দিয়ে কর নিজ দাসী
দীনা কৃষ্ণ দাসে কোয়ে এই জিনা মোরা হয়ে
কৃষ্ণ দাস কয়ে নমর
শ্রী রাধা গোবিন্দা প্রেমে সদা জিনা ভাসি
শ্রী রাধা গোবিন্দ প্রেমে সদয় নভাসি
শ্রী রাধা গোবিন্দা প্রেমে সদা জিনা ভাসি
শ্রী রাধা गोविंद प्रेम सदा ये नवासी
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्माहत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रनाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे
तानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्माहत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रनाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्माहत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रनाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्माहत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रनाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्माहत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रनाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्माहत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रनाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani.
Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani.
Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi.
Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi.
Nityai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nityai Gaura Hari Bol. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nityai Gaura Hari Bol. श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की जय.
Shri Vrindaye Tulasi Devai Priyaye Kesava Satya Krishna Bhakti Prade Devi Shatavataye Namah. Vrindaye Tulasi Devai Priyaye Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavataye Namah. Vrindaye Tulasi Devai Priyaye Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavataye Namah. Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki jai. Tulasi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you, his wishes fulfilled, bestow your mercy upon him to make him resident in Vrindavan. My desire is that you also give me a residence where the grove of the tree, Vrindavan Dhaman. As within my vision, I will always behold you, destined for Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a model of happiness. Please give me the privilege to go to the service and make me an honored servant. It's very important and always serve Krishna praise. May I always swim in love with Shri Radha and Govinda Shrimati Tulasi Maharani. Vrinda Devi ki jai. Shri Shri Shikyastakam ki jai. Mahatam karotu Jatadotava Vidadatu Lampato Matmanastastu Saivana Pura Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shri Krishna Kamuki Jai. Namo Mahavarannaya Krishna Prema Pradaya Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Nam Gaura Krishna. Glory to the Shri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart over the dust accumulated for years, and extinguishes the fire of conditional life or repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan moment is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because it spreads the rays of the benediction moment. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we're always anxious. Oh my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings. And thus you have hundreds of millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names you have invested all your transcendental energies. There is no even hard and fast rule for chanting these names. Oh my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names, that I'm so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. Once you chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself Lord and stroll in the street, one should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer our respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your cause of devotion, service, birth, and to wealth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor, yet somehow or other I'm falling in this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, Or will my eyes be decorated with tears of love, flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? Or will my voice choke up, and with the hairs of my body stand on end the recitation of your name? Oh Govinda, feeling your separation, I'm considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I feel all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one that Krishna is my Lord, and he should remain so, even if sunders me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he's always my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. Shri 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 Kristakam Ki Jai. Om Mahabharanaya Krishna. There are 10 offenses in matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that must be avoided. They are as follows. 1. Blaspheme the devotee to dedicate the life for propagating the holy name of the Lord. 2. To consider names of demigods like Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma to be equal to or independent of the name Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the orders of the spiritual master. 4. Blaspheme the Vedic literature or literatures and pursuits of Vedic version. 5. To consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation of the holy name of the Lord. 7.
Commit sinful activities in the strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord.
8. To
Consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are offered in Vedas, fruitive activities of karma kanda.
9.
To instruct the faithless person about the glories of the holy name.
And 10.
To not have complete faith in the chanting
of the holy names and
to
to
maintain material attachments even after
understanding so many instructions on this matter.
It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be a Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success, Krishna Prema.
Now let us
So for our most humble obeisances unto all the Vaishnava, the devotees of the Lord. They are just like desire trees that can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Vanchakalpatarabhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha Vaishnava Thakur ki jai. Nama Vishnu Padaya Krishna Padaya Guru Smarta Bhaktivedanta Swami Tanami Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvitsesa Sunyavadi Paskatis. Srimad Bhagavatam Grantha Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Janmadyasya yato nivayad itaratas chate suabhigyaswarat.
Janmadyasya yatam vayalitaratascha tirsvabhigyaswarat.
Tene Brahma Hridaya Adhikavaye Muyanti Yat Surayaha.
Tene Brahma Hridaya Adhikavaye Muyanti Yat Surayaha.
Tejo Varimadam Yata Vinimaya Yatra Trisargo Mersha.
Tejo Varimrida Jata Vinimayo Yatra Trisargomusya.
Damna Svena Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi.
Damna Svena Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi.
O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O all-pervading personality of Godhead.
O all-pervading personality of Godhead.
For my respectful obeisances unto you.
Offer my respectful obeisance unto you.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
And the primeval cause of all causes.
And the primeval cause of all causes.
Of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes.
Of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him.
And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him.
It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji.
It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji.
The original living being.
The original living being.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
As one is bewildered by the illusory representation.
As one is bewildered by the illusory representation.
Of water seen on fire or land seen on water.
Or water seen on fire or land seen on
Only
water.
because of him do the material universes.
Only because of him do the material universe.
Temporarily manifested by the reaction to the three modes of nature.
Temporarily manifested by the reaction to the three modes of nature.
Appear factual, although they are unreal.
Appear factual, although they are
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna.
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna,
who is eternally existent in transcendental abode,
which is eternally existent and transcendent,
which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world.
which is forever free from the illusory representation of material
I
world.
meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
Dharma projita kaitravocha,
Dharma Prajita Kaitavotra,
paramo nirmatsaranam satam,
Paramo Nirmasharanam Satam,
nedyam vastavam atra vastu,
Vedyam Vastavam Astra Vastu,
shivadam tapatrayam,
Shivadam Taputrayam Lanam,
Shrimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite,
Shrimad Bhagavate
Kimba
Mahamanipite,
Purir Ishvara,
Kimba Paririshvara,
Sadyo Hridi Avarudyatetra,
Sadhya Uruddhya Varidya Titra,
Kriti Bihi Sususabhistakshana.
Kritivhi Shushu Suvistatyana,
Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated.
completely rejecting all religious activities which are material
This
motivated.
Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth,
This Bhagavad Puran propounds the high truth,
which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart.
which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in the heart.
The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
There has to be the reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
Such truth uproots the threefold miseries.
Such a truth uproot the threefold miseries.
This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity
This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva's maturity
is sufficient in itself for God realization.
is sufficient itself for God realization.
What is the need of any other scripture?
What is the need of the other scripture?
As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam,
As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam,
by this culture of knowledge,
by this culture of knowledge,
one is, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
the Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
Nigama kapaturur galitam phalam,
Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam,
sukamakad amrita dravya samgitam,
sukamakad mridudrava sangitam,
pibata bhagavatam rasam alayam,
vivata bhagavatam
Ahor
visamanayam,
ahoraska bhuvibavukaha.
Mora hora sika bhuvibabuka.
O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam.
Who expert and thoughtful and relish Srimad
The mature
Bhagavatam,
fruit of the desired true Vedic literatures.
the mature fruit, the desired fruit of the Vedic
It
literature.
emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami.
Emanated from the lips of Shishukadeva Goswami.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more
Although
tasteful.
its nectarian juice was already relishable for all,
Although its nectarian juice was all relishable for all,
including liberated souls.
including liberated souls.
Shinvatam Swakata Krishna.
Shambhatam Swakata Krishna.
Punya Shravana Kirtana.
Punya Shravana Kirtanam.
Hridyantak Stohi Padrani.
Vidyantasto Hyavadrani.
Vidunati Srihit Satam.
Vidunati Suritsatam.
To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures,
To hear about Krishna from the Vedic
or to
literature,
hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita,
or to hear from it directly through the Bhagavad Gita,
is itself righteous activity.
is itself righteous activity.
And for one who hears about Krishna,
And for one who hears about Krishna,
Lord Krishna, who's dwelling in everyone's heart,
Lord Krishna, who is dwelling within everyone's
acts
heart,
as a best wishing friend
acts as the best wishing
and
friend,
purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him.
and purifies the body who constantly engaged in hearing
Nasta
him.
presu bhadresu
Nasta Preshwa Bhadeshu
nityam bhagavata sevaya
Nityam Bhagavata Seva
bhagavati uttama sloke
Bhagavati Uttama
bhakti
Sloke
bhavati naistaki.
Bhakti Bhavati Nastiki.
In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge.
And he said you would naturally develop the transcendental.
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavad
and from the devotees,
and from the
he
devotees,
becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord.
he becomes fixed in devotional service of the Lord.
Tadarajastamo bhava
Tadarajastamo Bhava
kamalobhadayasche
Kamalobhadayashay
cheta etaranavitam
Cheta Itera Navidam
stitvam sattve prasidhati.
Sitam Sadve Prasidati.
By development of devotional
By development of
service,
devotional
one
service,
becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance.
one becomes free from the modes of passion and ignorance.
And thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
And as material lust and avarice are diminished.
Evam prasana manaso
Evam Prasanamanaso
bhagavat bhakti yogataha
Bhagavad Bhakti Yoga
bhagavat tattva vijnanam
Bhagavad Tattva
mukta
Vijnanam
sangasya jayate.
Mukta Sangasya Jayate.
When these impurities are wiped away,
When these impurities are wiped
the
away,
candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness.
the candidate remains steady in his position of pure
Becomes
goodness,
enlivened by devotional service,
become enlivened by devotional service,
and understands the science of God perfectly.
and understands the science of God perfectly.
Vidyate hridaya grantis,
Vidyate hridaya grantis,
siddhyante sarva samsaya,
Shiryante sarva samshaya,
siyante chasya karmani,
Yante chasa
krishna
karmani,
evat manishvari.
Dusta evarmaneshwari.
Thus, bhakti yoga severs the heart not of material affection,
Thus the Bhakti Yoga severs the heart of the material
and enables
affection,
one to come at once to the stage of a samsayam samagram,
and enables one to come at once to the stage of Assumption,
understanding of the supreme absolute truth personality of Godhead.
understanding the supreme absolute truth of the personality of God.
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his bodies the Krishna consciousness
can one understand the science of Krishna.
can one understand the science of Krishna.
Shishi Guru Astika prayers. The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy.
The spiritual master receiving the benediction from the ocean of mercy,
Just as a cloud pours water on a forest fire to extinguish
just as the cloud pours water on the fire for the extinguished it.
it. So the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world
So the spiritual master delivers the material afflicted world
by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence.
by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master,
I offer my respectful obeisance to the lotus feet of such a spiritual master,
who is an ocean of auspicious
who
qualities,
is in the ocean of auspicious qualities,
chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy,
chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy,
singing and playing musical instruments.
singing and playing musical
The
instruments.
spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
The spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu,
Because he is relishing mellows of pure devotion within his,
because he's
Mind.
relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind.
sometimes his hair stands on end.
Sometimes his bodily hair stand on end.
He feels quivering in his body,
He feels quivering in his body,
and tears flow from his eyes like waves.
and tears flow from his eyes like
I
waves.
offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
I offer my respectful obeisance to the lotus feet of such a spiritual
The
master.
spiritual master is always engaged in the temple worship of Shri Shri Radha and Krishna.
The spiritual master is always engaged in the temple worship of Shri Radha and Krishna.
He also engages his disciples in such worship.
He also engages his disciples in such worship.
They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments,
They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments,
clean their temple,
cleanse the
and
temple,
perform other similar worship of the Lord.
and perform other similar.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual
The
master.
spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food.
The spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food.
Analyzes that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and sucked.
And that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and sucked.
When the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavat Prasad,
When the spiritual master sees that devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavad
he
Prasad,
is satisfied.
he is satisfied.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual
The
master.
spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastimes of Radhika and Madhava.
The spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastimes of Shri Radha and Krishna,
And their qualities, names, and forms.
and about their qualities, names, and
The
forms.
spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment.
The spiritual master aspires to relish these in every moment.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
I offer my respectful obeisance to the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
The spiritual master is very dear
The spiritual master is very dear
because he is expert in assisting the gopis,
because he is expert in assisting the gopis,
who at different times make different tasteful arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs.
who at different times make different tasteful arrangement for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs
Within the groves of Vrindavan,
within the groves of
I
Vrindavan.
offer my most humble obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
I offer my most humble obeisance to the lotus feet of such a spiritual
The
master.
spiritual master is to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord,
The spiritual master is to be honored as much as Supreme Lord
because he is the most confidential servitor of the Lord.
because he's the most confidential servitor of the Lord.
This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures
This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures
and followed by all authorities.
and followed by all authorities.
Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master,
Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisance to the lotus feet of such a spiritual
who is
master
a bona fide representative of Sri Hare Krishna.
who is a bona fide representative of Sri Hare Krishna.
By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna.
By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna.
Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement.
Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement.
Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master.
Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master.
At least 3 times a day, I should offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master.
At least 3 times a day, I should offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master.
Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 4, Text 24. Namastasmai Bhagavate.
Namastasmai Bhagavate.
Vasudevaya Vedhase.
Vasudevaya Dev.
Papurgyanam Ayam Somya.
Papurgyanam Ayam Somya.
Yan Mukham Baruhasavam.
Yanmukham Buruham Savam.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. I offer my respectful obeisances unto Srila Vyasadeva, the incarnation of Vasudevaya, who compiled the Vedic scriptures. The pure devotees drink up the nectarian transcendental knowledge, dropping from the lotus mouth of the Lord. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. In pursuance of the specific utterance Vedhase, or the compiler of the system of transcendental knowledge, Srila Sridhara Swami has commented that the respectful obeisances are offered to Srila Vyasadeva, who is the incarnation of Vasudeva. Srila Jiva Goswami has agreed to this, but Srila Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakur has made a further advance, namely, that the nectar from the mouth of Lord Krishna is transferred to his different consorts, and thus they learn the fine arts of music, dance, dressing, decorations, and all such things which are relished by the Lord. Such music, dance, and decorations enjoyed by the Lord are certainly not anything mundane, because the Lord is addressed in the very beginning as para, or transcendental. This transcendental knowledge is unknown to the forgotten conditioned souls. Srila Vyasadeva, who is the incarnation of the Lord, thus compiled the Vedic literatures to revive the lost memory of the conditioned souls about their eternal relation with the Lord. One should therefore try to understand the Vedic scriptures, or the nectar transferred by the Lord to his consorts in the conjugal humor, from the lotus mouth of Vyasadeva or Sukdeva. By gradual development of transcendental knowledge, one can rise to the stage of the transcendental arts of music and dance displayed by the Lord in his Rasa Lila. But without having the Vedic knowledge, one can hardly understand the transcendental nature of the Lord's Rasa dance and music. The pure devotees of the Lord, however, can equally relish the nectar in the form of the profound philosophical discourses and in the form of kissing by the Lord in the Rasa dance, as there is no mundane distinction between the two. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. I offer my respectful obeisances unto Srila Vyasadeva, the incarnation of Vasudeva, who compiled the Vedic scriptures. The pure devotees drink up the nectarian transcendental knowledge, dropping from the lotus-like mouth of the Lord. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So this is again, very profound points are being made in this purport. And basically, it's saying, if we look at Bhagavad Gita 13:24, it says, Yo evam viti purusham pakritim cha gunai saha sarvata vartamano pi nasa buyo bijayate. One who understands this philosophy concerning material nature, the living entity, and the interactions of the modes of nature is sure to attain liberation. He will not take birth here again, regardless of his present position. So, if one can understand material nature, the living entity, and the interaction of the modes of material nature, then one can attain liberation. So, in the purport, Prabhupada says, clear understanding of material nature, the super soul, the individual soul, and their interrelation makes one eligible to become liberated and turn to the spiritual atmosphere without being forced to return to this material nature. This is the result of knowledge. The purpose of knowledge is to understand distinctly that the living entity has by chance fallen into this material existence. By his personal endeavor in association with authorities, saintly persons, and a spiritual master, he has to understand his position and then revert to spiritual consciousness or Krishna consciousness by understanding Bhagavad Gita as it is, explained by the personality of Godhead. Then it is certain that he will never come again into the material existence. He will be transferred into the spiritual world for a blissful eternal life of knowledge. So this is extremely important verse and purport, because it's explaining the purpose of knowledge. And the verse today is talking about Vedase, which means that it is that Vyasadeva is the compiler of the system of transcendental knowledge. So that's why we read Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. So this is further explained in the 7th chapter, 12th, 13th, and 14th verse. There it says, 13th, 14th, 12th, 13th, and 14th. Yichaiva satpika bhava rajasas tamasas chaye matai veti tan vidi natvam tesu natam aham tesu te mai natva aham tesu te mai. Know that all states of being, be they of goodness, passion, or ignorance, are manifested by my energy. I am in one sense everything, but I am independent. I am not under the modes of material nature, for they, on the contrary, are within me. But this, along with 9th chapter, 4th verse, is explaining Achintya Bheda Abheda Tattva. Krishna is one and simultaneously different. So, in the purport it says, all material activities in the world are being conducted by the three modes of material nature. Although these material modes of nature are emanations from the Supreme Lord, Krishna, he is not subject to them. For instance, under the state laws, one may be punished, but the king, the lawmaker, is not subject to that law. So we saw that here in the United States. I mean, President Trump, he was accused of all kinds of misdemeanors and what you would call felonies, but they couldn't do anything because he was the president and he's above prosecution because he's a sitting president. But now they're trying to get him on all those accusations because he's no longer the president. And obviously under a monarchy, the king can do no wrong. Right? So Prabhupada says, although these material modes of nature are emanations from the Supreme Lord Krishna, he is not subject to them. For instance, under the state laws, one may be punished, but the king, the lawmaker, is not subject to that law. Similarly, all the modes of material nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance, are emanations from the Supreme Lord Krishna, but Krishna is not subject to material nature. Therefore, he is nirguna, which means that these gunas, or modes, although issuing from him, do not affect him. That is one of the special characteristics of Bhagavan, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, this verse 13:24 says that someone who can understand this philosophy concerning material nature, the living entity, and the interactions of the modes of nature, is sure to attain liberation. So this 7:12 it makes it very clear that although Krishna is the source of the three modes of material nature, he's not affected by them. So that's number one understanding. But number two understanding, Chibir Gunamayer Bhavir Eve Sarvam Itam Jagat Mohita Nabijananti Mam Ibram Param Avyayam. Text 7:13 says, deluded by the three modes, goodness, passion, and ignorance, the whole world does not know me, who am above the modes and inexhaustible. So, the Prabhupada says in a purport, the whole world is enchanted by three modes of material nature. Those who are bewildered by these three modes cannot understand that transcendental to this material nature is the Supreme Lord Krishna. So this is extremely important. Krishna is not, although he's the source of the modes, he's not affected by them. He controls them. But all of us who have fallen in the material world, we are completely controlled by the modes of material nature. That's our dilemma. So one who understands this philosophy concerning material nature, the living entity, and the interactions of the modes of nature is sure to attain liberation. So now we understand what is the position of the jiva. We're illusioned by these modes and limited by time and so forth. Then Prabhupada says, every living entity under the influence of material nature has a particular type of body and a particular type of psychological and biological activities accordingly. Yes, we can see this in the animals and also in human beings. Like in the animals, a pig, if you give him halva, he might nibble at it, but he's not really interested. But if you give him a stool, oh, well, he slurps it up like it's the end of life. It's the greatest nectar of life, right? That's the nature of the pig. Right? But if you offer a stool to a human being, he'll say, ugh, I don't like this. But you give nice halva, he'll eat it up and say, please give me more. So we see that the psychological and biological activities are determined by a particular type of body, and the influence that particular body, which includes the mind, intelligence, ego, are influenced by the modes of material nature. There are four classes of men functioning in the three material modes of nature. Those who are purely in the mode of goodness are called brahmanas. Those who are purely in the mode of passion are called kshatriyas. Those who are in the modes of both passion and ignorance are called vaishyas. Those who are completely in ignorance are called sudras. And those who are less than that are animals or animal life. However, these designations are not permanent. That's the main point. I may be either a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or whatever. In any case, this life is temporary. But although life is temporary and we do not know what we are going to be in the next life, by the spell of this illusory energy, we consider ourselves in terms of this bodily conception of life. And we thus think that we are American, Indian, Russian, or Brahmachari, or Brahmana, Hindu, Muslim, etc. And if we become entangled with the modes of material nature, then we forget the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is behind all these modes. So Lord Krishna says that living entities deluded by these three modes of nature do not understand that behind the material background is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yeah. So the scientists, they say, there's only matter. If you want to believe in spiritual world, blah, 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 it's okay. If it makes you feel good, you can believe in it. But that's not science. Science is what we're telling you. There's no God. There's no spiritual world. There's only this material world, and we have to use our logic, reason, and science to perfectly understand the material world. Well, the real fact is they don't understand anything about the material world. They just know how to manipulate things. And Prabhupada has said all their discoveries were accidental. It's another interesting point. by experimenting, looking for one thing, you accidentally find out about something else, right? So many discoveries are like that. It happens in the course of looking for something. Just like Columbus was looking for India. What did he find? The West India, right? The Caribbean islands, and then eventually the North America and South America. So, in the same way, scientists are looking for one thing, and accidentally they stumble onto something else. That's normal amongst scientists. So sometimes they hypothesize that something exists because of mathematical equations or hunches or whatever, and then they have to experiment to see if that's true. But they don't really understand much about material nature, although they claim to. Just because they can make an airplane fly through the air or a rocket that can go to, they claim, outer space, that doesn't mean they understand material nature. That means that they have manipulated some things to imitate some of the yoga siddhis and try and reproduce them mechanically rather than in the way that the yogis can produce or achieve those siddhis. So, but the mechanical imitation of a siddhi is highly limited. Highly, highly limited. It can only go so fast, and it can only go up to a certain position in space, and there's so much limitation on it. So here it says, those who are purely in the mode of goodness are called brahmanas and so forth. But all these designations are temporary. But although life is temporary, and we do not know what we are going to be in the next life, by the spell of this illusory energy, we consider ourselves in terms of this bodily conception of life, and we thus think that we are American, Indian, Russian, or Brahmana. So that's our position. So one who understands this philosophy concerning material nature, the living entity, and the interactions of modes of nature is sure to attain liberation. So this purport is explaining those three things. Then it says, so Lord Krishna says that the living entities deluded by these three modes of nature do not understand that behind the material background is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The greatest scientists, especially the modern ones, they don't accept that God is behind everything. They say there's no God. And why is that? Because they're completely deluded by the three modes of material nature. Therefore, you see, even these great preachers, like this guy named, who was an Indian, a Hindu, and he became a Christian, and then he became a big, one of the biggest, most prominent preachers in Christianity in India and in America. So his name was Zachariah. I forget his first name. So he was on the radio every day preaching blah, 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 and knocking down, Hinduism and glorifying Jesus and Christianity, and everyone was looking up to him. And then he died last year, right? And then the truth came out. He was a sexual predator of women, and usually poor women. And he was going around getting away with it because he was so famous and so prominent as a preacher of Jesus and Christianity. So he couldn't control his zipper. He's no different than Bill Gates or Bill Clinton or any of these people. But he was a very, very, let's say, clever preacher. I mean, he put on a fantastic act. When you heard him preach, I would listen to him every once in a while on the radio just to check him out. And I always was suspicious of him because he was mixing up a lot of philosophy, and then he'd talk about the Vedas also, and he would always end up with the conclusion that Christianity is the best and these other things are nonsense and so forth. And, I was always thinking in my mind, there's something wrong with this guy, but I didn't imagine that he was a sexual predator, right? He had me fooled also, and this has become a common thing now in Christianity. Many of their big preachers fall down. The only one that didn't fall down was Billy Graham, or at least we don't know that he fell down. Because early on in the 1950s, he and other preachers that were working with him, they all made a vow to be always faithful to their wife and never cheat on their wife. They made that vow, and they stuck to it. And therefore, they were very successful. But this second generation after them, they became prominent preachers, but many of them have fallen down. I'm not going to say all, but many of them have fallen down. And it's a big dilemma for Christianity in North America, because it's extremely embarrassing for them. Huh? Yeah, Rabbi Zakaria. Yeah, he's an Indian, right? he used all his Indian intelligence and to defeat the Vedas, or try to defeat the Vedas, and make Christianity superior to Vedic Dharma. And he's a complete failure. Okay, so therefore, Prabhupada ends this purport by saying, there are many different kinds of living entities, human beings, demigods, animals, etc. And each and every one of them is under the influence of material nature. And all of them have forgotten the transcendent personality of Godhead. Because they're deluded by material nature, they cannot understand that behind the material background is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Those who are not in the modes of passion and ignorance, and even those who are in the mode of goodness, cannot go beyond the impersonal Brahman conception of the absolute truth. So even if one is situated very firmly in the mode of goodness, the most they can achieve is impersonal Brahman. Right? And they'll fall down. They are bewildered before the Supreme Lord in his personal feature. And that's a fact. One time there was this lady in France, and we were talking to her about Krishna. And she said, I just can't accept this. I can't accept that this little baby who's crawling around on his his arms and legs, and that he's the Supreme Personality of God. I can't accept that. So you see, Krishna is bewildering to almost all people, because when he appears in his personal, original form, they're bewildered. They can't accept it. So they are bewildered before the Supreme Lord in his personal feature, which possesses all beauty, opulence, knowledge, strength, fame, and renunciation. When even those who are in goodness cannot understand, what hope is there for those in passion and ignorance? Krishna consciousness is transcendental to all these three modes of material nature, and those who are truly established in Krishna consciousness are actually liberated. So, yesam tvantakitam papam jananam punyakarmanam te dvandva mohanirmakta bhajantimam tritivata. Unless one becomes above the influence of the modes, they cannot really understand Krishna consciousness. So it says, even persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, this is 7th chapter, 28th verse, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, are freed from the dualities of delusion, and they engage themselves in my service with determination. So, that is very important, because it says, those eligible for elevation to the transcendental position are mentioned in this verse. For those who are sinful, atheistic, foolish, and deceitful, it's very difficult to transcend the duality of desire and hate. So that's Ravi Zakaria and many other big preachers. And I can name them, but I'm not going to name them. But they all have failed. Why? Because they were not able to transcend the duality of desire and hate. That's why, the Indians who become converted to Christianity, they're taught to hate Hinduism. That's the hallmark of these. They're haters. They're not lovers of Jesus. They're haters. Their qualification as a Christian is to hate Hinduism and try to destroy it. They're not devotees of Jesus. They've become devotees of the devil, who is full of hate. It's very strange. Because Christianity is supposed to be full of love for Jesus, right? But the way they preach it in India, and whenever, like myself, I'm a Christian. Whenever I meet an Indian Christian, I'm horrified by these people. They have such hatred. Where is their love of Jesus? They don't have any love for Jesus. They just hate Hindus. They want to destroy Hinduism. It's very strange, very, very strange how they're preaching, how the Christians are preaching in India. So, basically, one has to be free of all sinful reactions, and then one transcends the duality of desire and hate. Only those who have passed their lives in practicing the regulative principles of religion, and who have acted piously, and who have conquered sinful reactions, can accept devotional service and gradually rise to the pure knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's gradually rise. Everywhere Prabhupada says gradual progress, gradually rise to Krishna consciousness. Why? This is called gradual, what we're doing right now. Every day, listening to Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, at least once a day, but it should be twice or three times a day. This is called the gradual, progressive process. Why? Because you can be situated completely in the mode of goodness. You can even merge into Brahman, but you will fall down. But you get bewildered trying to understand Krishna, who appears as if he's an ordinary human being, and goes through different stages of being a baby, being a child, and being an adolescent. He never gets older than 16 or 20 years. He never looks old, he never gets old, because his body is transcendental. People are bewildered by this. They can't understand it. Because even if they attain Brahman realization, they don't understand Krishna. And we see, and we, like we explained yesterday, there are even Sri Vaishnavas who don't understand Krishna. They understand some things about him, but they don't really understand him completely. So therefore they claim that Krishna is expanded from Narayana. Right? So here it says, this elevation, this elevation is possible in Krishna consciousness in the association of pure devotees, for in the association of great devotees one can be delivered from delusion, the delusion of desire and hate. Right? It is stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 5.5.2 that if one actually wants to be liberated, he must render service to the devotees. Mahat sevam dwaram ahur vimukti. Because the devotee can open up the door of eternal salvation for the devotee. Or the genuine devotee can open up the door for others. But one who associates with materialistic people is on the path of leading to the darkest region of existence, tamodwaram, yositam sangi sangam. Because they're going to be in association of people who have strong material desires and don't really believe that this baby Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They might believe in Jesus somewhat, and that can be helpful. They might believe that one should live always in the mode of goodness, but they will not understand Krishna because they don't associate with pure devotees. They don't regularly hear the gradual hearing day after day of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. Therefore, they're still under the delusion of desire and hate. All the devotees of the Lord traverse. See, this is another reason why why parents should vet a teacher before they let their child be taught by them. Because if the teacher has all bad qualities, what can they teach your kid? Just being in the same room with their breath is contaminating. Their breathing is contaminating because they're breathing out air that's been touched by the meat that they ate the night before or the same day or at lunch, right? So the whole thing is contaminating, being in association with such people. But one who associates with materialistic people is on the path leading to the darkest region of existence. All the devotees of the Lord traverse this earth just to recover the conditioned souls from their delusion. The impersonalists do not know that forgetting their constitutional position as subordinate to the Supreme Lord is the greatest violation of God's law. In other words, the Mayavadis are the worst violators of Krishna himself, because they don't believe that they are in a subordinate position to the Lord. They believe they can be on the same level as the Lord. Unless one is reinstated in his own constitutional position means by our constitution as a jiva, we are always subordinate to the Lord. We are always the servant of the Lord. We're never the Lord ourselves. Unless one is reinstated in his own constitutional position, it is not possible to understand the Supreme Personality or to be fully engaged in his transcendental loving service with determination. So this is why it says there are very few people that actually become completely Krishna conscious. It's a rare thing. Sa Mahatma Sudurlabha. It's very auspicious, very wonderful when someone attains the position of becoming a pure devotee. Okay, and then the last verse, Daivi Esagunamaya Mamamaya Duradya Mam Evaye Prapadyante Mayametam Tarantite. These three verses explain what is material nature, the living entity, and his relationship to Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and his relationship to material nature, and the interactions of the modes of nature. This is all part of verse 1324, and then it's explained in these three verses. So now it says that this material nature, or this divine energy of mind, consisting of the three modes of material nature, is impossible to overcome. What are the scientists trying to do? They're trying to overcome it. They're trying to do something that's impossible. But yet, people are fooled to think that it's possible for them to do it. To conquer birth and death, old age and disease. They haven't conquered anything. They have, abortion, and so many techniques of abortion, but still the world population is increasing. What have they conquered? They just diminish it a little bit in the United States and Europe, but it's the rest of the world, and they try to diminish it in India also with abortion, and China also, but they failed. They can't stop proliferating human beings. And then they failed in trying to stop death, you see. But they have succeeded in learning how to kill people faster with atomic bombs and all kinds of machine guns and tanks and rockets and dynamite and explosions and lasers. They can kill people much faster now. But they can't stop death, they can't stop birth, they can't stop old age, although they think they can with Botox and other nonsense things. So in this purport it says, the Supreme Personality of God has innumerable energies, and all these energies are divine. So the material energy is also divine, so how are they going to overcome it when it's actually spiritual? They don't believe that it's spiritual. They say, it's material. It's not spiritual. And spiritual is just fairy tales. So what do they know? They know nothing. They just know how to manipulate things a little bit to make cell phones and cars and radios and rockets and things like that, atomic bombs to kill people, and viruses, and yeah, they make viruses also. They manufacture viruses. Yeah. The Chinese are advanced in virus manufacturing. Yes. Although the living entities are part of his or of Krishna's energies and are therefore divine, due to contact with material energy, their original superior power is covered. What? We have superior power? Yes, we do. But it's covered right now because of our being bewildered by the material energy. And guess who are jivas just like us? Brahma, Surya, Chandra, Agni. They're all individuals like we are, but they have become perfected by devotional service. They're not completely perfect, but they're almost. They're very, very highly advanced jivas. And they have up to 78% of Krishna's transcendental qualities. As previously, being thus covered by material energy, one cannot possibly overcome its influence. So you see there, although in the purport it says it's difficult to overcome the divine nature or the gunamite, but then in the purport it says that one cannot possibly overcome the influence of the material energy. So it is impossible. It's stated right there in the purport. As previously stated, both the material and spiritual natures, being emanations from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, are eternal. The living entities belong to the eternal superior nature of the Lord, but due to contamination by the inferior nature, matter, their illusion is also eternal. That means the jiva could remain eternally in the material world, going through the process of birth and death, because the jiva is eternal. It can either be eternally in the material world, or it can be liberated eternally in the spiritual world, or go from one to the other. So that explains the position of the jiva very correctly. And then it says, as previously stated, both the material and spiritual natures, being emanations from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, are eternal. The living entities belong to the eternal spiritual superior nature of the Lord, but due to contamination by the inferior nature, matter, their illusion is also eternal. The conditioned soul is therefore called nitya bada, or eternally conditioned. No one can trace out the history of his becoming conditioned at a certain date in material nature. That means all of us have gone through millions of births and deaths for a huge amount of time. I mean, unimaginable. Hundreds and millions of years, right, to get to the human form of life. No one can trace out the history of his becoming conditioned at a certain date in material history. Consequently, his release from the clutches of material nature is very difficult, even though that material nature is an inferior energy, because material energy is ultimately conducted by the supreme will, which the living entity cannot overcome. Again, it says it. It's impossible to overcome the material energy by any material means. It's impossible. Inferior material nature is defined herein as divine nature due to its divine connection and movement by the divine will. Being conducted by divine will, material nature, although inferior, acts so wonderfully in the construction and destruction of cosmic manifestation. The Vedas confirm this as follows: Mayam tu prakritim vidyan, mayanam tu maheshwaram. Although Maya, illusion, is false or temporary, the background of Maya is the supreme magician, the personality of Godhead, who is Maheshwara, who is the greatest controller, Ishwara, the supreme controller. Smritasvatara Upanishad. So the word Maheshwara is often used to refer to the Lord Shiva, but Krishna is the supreme Maheshwara. Even he's above Lord Shiva. And this again is misunderstood. The Shaivites, they misunderstand this completely. Another meaning of guna is rope. It is to be understood that the conditioned soul is tightly tied by the ropes of illusion. A man bound by the hands and feet cannot free himself. He must be helped by a person who is unbound. So the guru, if it's a bona fide guru, is unbound. He doesn't have his hands and legs tied by the modes of material nature. Because the bound cannot help the bound, the rescuer must be liberated by the unbounded, right? Therefore, only Lord Krishna or his bona fide representative, the spiritual master, can release the conditioned soul. Without such superior help, one cannot be freed from the bondage of material nature. Devotional service or Krishna consciousness can help one gain such release. Krishna, being the Lord of illusory energy, can order the insurmountable energy to release the conditioned soul. There it is. That's the way of salvation. Krishna can order Maya, leave my devotee alone. Maya has to listen because she is the shadow energy of the Lord. In other words, a shadow cannot move unless the original object moves. So it's only by the will of the Lord that Maya can move one way or the other. Devotional service or Krishna consciousness can help one gain such release. This is why I joined Krishna consciousness when I realized this. This is the only way to change. It was the only way to change my karma and my fate that was determined by my previous life and lives. There's no other way you can change that. Krishna, being the Lord of illusory energy, can order this insurmountable energy to release the conditioned soul. He orders this release out of his causeless mercy on the surrendered soul and out of his paternal affection for the living entity who is originally a beloved son of the Lord. Therefore, surrender unto the lotus feet of the Lord is the only means to get free from the clutches of the stringent material nature. The one thing that can help people, the scientists and philosophers, reject. You see how vicious they are. The words Mam Eva are also significant. Mam means unto Krishna, Vishnu only, and not Brahma or Shiva. Although Brahma and Shiva are greatly elevated and are almost on the level of Vishnu, it is not possible for such incarnations of Rajaguna passion and Tamaguna ignorance to release the conditioned soul from the clutches of Maya. So don't even try. You don't have to go to Shiva for anything. You don't have to go to Brahma. Who went to Brahma and Shiva? Right? Hiranyakashipu, Ravana. All the demons go to them. Although Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma are devotees, the demons go to them thinking that they can give them all benediction of immortality. It doesn't work like that. In other words, both Brahma and Shiva are also under the influence of Maya. Slightly, but they are tinged with it. Only Vishnu is the master of Maya. Therefore, he alone can give release to the conditioned soul. The Vedas, Svatara Upanishad 3.8, confirm this in the phrase Tam eva viditva, or freedom is possible only by understanding Krishna. Even Lord Shiva affirms that liberation can be achieved only by the mercy of Vishnu. Lord Shiva says, Mukti pradata sarve sam Vishnu eva na samsayaha. There's no doubt that Vishnu is the deliverer of the liberation for everyone. So here you have 3 verses that explain material nature, the living entity, and the interaction of the modes of nature. And therefore, if you understand these 3 things, you're sure that such a person will attain liberation and not take birth here again, regardless of one's present position. So it's getting late, so I'm going to stop right there. There's another part to this purport. We'll go over that tomorrow. Are there any questions? Okay, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you very much. Gaur Premanandi Haribol. Which person?